What could we expect from former President Duterte's confirmation of charges hearing on Monday? Let's ask legal expert and former Integrated Bar of the Philippines President, Domingo Cayosa. Welcome again to The Big Story, Atty. Cayosa.
Good evening, ladies. Magandang gabi po sa ating mga kababayan.
Well, the chamber, of course, confirmed the right of the former president not to appear or to waive his appearance in the hearing. But it seems anticlimactic to many of those, following the ICC proceedings. What can you comment?
Well, not really, because the confirmation of charges hearing is not the trial itself. And under the own rules, the presence of the accused or the respondent is not required. He can waive that. But the court has made it clear that when the trial begins, if the pre-trial chamber finds that there is enough ground to charge him, then during the trial proper, then he has to be there. Because under the rules of the ICC, you cannot have a trial unless the accused is personally present.
What are your expectations of how the prosecution will lay its case in the confirmation of charges hearing?
Well, in accordance with the nature of crimes against humanity, the focus will be the responsibility or the involvement of the accused, whether it is just former President Duterte or they might include the 8 others and many others. The focus is not really to prove that they shot the victims. The focus will be to prove that among themselves, they put together a plan, a policy, or a scheme by which drug suspects were summarily killed without undergoing due process. That's the focus. Unlike an ordinary criminal case for murder, the focus will be who pulled the trigger, who killed whom, and how. In this particular case, it's the scheme that has to be to convict them.
Hence, the disclosure of the co-perpetrators prior to the confirmation of charges hearing.
Yes, because the evidence of both sides were already submitted to the pre-trial chamber, and to the mind of the pre-trial chamber, there are at least 8 others whom they think could be liable as co-perpetrators. So this is slightly different again from the traditional concept of conspiracy or accomplice or accessory.
Could you elaborate further? How different from the conspiracy, for instance?
Well, conspiracy is all of them got together and they conspired or they mutually decided to commit a crime. In this particular case, the participation of a co-perpetrator is necessary but not sufficient to commit the crime or not sufficient to put in motion the whole operation. So, for example, in the case of former Secretary of Justice, it is not necessary that he directly participated in the planning. What is being condemned now is his inaction, because as a DOJ secretary, he assiduously had investigated and filed cases against the EJK perpetrators. Then the plan might not have prospered because the policeman or the DDS would be afraid of being prosecuted. So inaction here would still be considered as becoming a co-perpetrator. So magkaiba ng konti sa concept natin.
Like a sin of omission.
Yes, it can be your action or inaction that put together and made possible this scheme of killing or extrajudicial killing of drug suspects.
Well, Attorney, given the large quantity of evidence the prosecution supposedly has, do you anticipate that it will be an uphill battle for the defense to mount a good counter-argument?
Well, it's not really the number of witnesses or documents. It's the weight of this. Unfortunately for the defense, what we see to be problematic for them are there are many public utterances of President Duterte. There are records of EJK victims, the so-called nanlaman, and records of how many of these were investigated, how many cases were filed, and how many were convicted. They cannot escape that. So there are also records of the police. And the third one is there are some witnesses who used to be part of the DDS. So that's inside information, and that could be very credible.
Okay. Well, Attorney Cayosa, if I may switch the topics, if you guys have nothing else on the ICC, back here at home, of course, almost right after, the confirmation of charges, we'll be going into debates in the lower house about the 4 impeachment cases filed against Vice President Sara Duterte. How do you expect that to go, given that, the SC, of course, gave a ruling in July last year, then they gave another one that's almost contradictory. That's at least according to that discussion in UP Law earlier this week. What's your fearless forecast on how this will go?
Well, I think the impeachment proceedings now will proceed. The House of Representatives and the Senate will be more mindful, even if they don't agree, and even if the very controversial decision of the Supreme Court has been labeled to be faulty or incorrect, it has to be obeyed. So I suppose the congressmen and the senators will adjust a bit their processes so that the Supreme Court cannot again come into the picture and delay the proceedings. So that's a given already. They don't need to respect it, but they have to go by it. And I suppose what happened with the impeachment complaint of the president against the president will also, that same procedure should also be followed, so that there are no charges or no claims of double standards or unequal application of the rules or the laws.
But given the new rules, what are the pitfalls? Can we already anticipate VP Sara running to the Supreme Court again, asking for relief from the SC?
Well, given the circumstances, the evidence will be the same. As a matter of fact, this
Yes.
time it's been added damaging evidence coming from this, again, an insider, Madriaga, who claims to be willing to testify, and he was already included in the 4th impeachment complaint. So far as the evidence is concerned, again, they cannot do away with that. It's already there. They are publicly known. We've heard testimonies, admissions, documents. So it will not change. Perhaps just the process. So most probably the House of Representatives will also avoid the express lane and go to the Committee on Justice. Also for political reasons. If you really want to derail the presidential bid of the vice president, who declared his intention very, very early in the game, a prolonged hearing in the Committee on Justice, which most probably will be televised, will do a lot of damage for her.
Attorney, I wanted to ask you about the affidavits in particular, right? You mentioned the Madriaga affidavit being added to the 4th impeachment complaint. And of course, we're also monitoring the flood control cases. A lot of these charges that have been filed are also based on affidavits. What is the strength really of an affidavit? And how does the process go in terms of the one who wrote it, testifying, and what is really the weight? Because I can just say anything, people would say, have it notarized, and, does that count as the absolute truth?
Well, the advantage or affidavits are held at a higher level of credibility or weight because it is under oath, meaning to say the person signing the document or the person stating those facts under oath knows that if he's lying, then he can be held accountable and criminally charged for perjury. And nowadays, in the past, the penalty for perjury was very low, but nowadays they've increased it. So because of that, there's a presumption that you would expect somebody testifying under oath or signing an affidavit would tell the truth. But the affidavit is not enough. If the affidavit is used as an evidence against an accused, then it is the constitutional right of the accused to cross-examine the affiant. So it has to be there. So again, if the affiant does not present himself for cross-examination, then the affidavit will be practically useless.
So speculative if, the impeachment goes through and we see a trial, they could ask Madriaga, even though I understand he's in jail, to actually come out and be cross-examined by the defense.
Yeah, that will be the case. And it will be very easy for them to get him out of jail to testify. And then after the testimony, he will be brought back to his cell.
They did that during the hearings for Secretary De Lima, remember?
Yes, of course, one ploy for the defense or one strategy for the defense is will say, we cannot trust this guy because he's a criminal, he's in jail. But he hasn't been convicted. He is also entitled to presumption of innocence. So,
It's also all the recantations that happen, like Cesc already mentioned the case of Congresswoman De Lima. I remember a lot of those people who testified against her later on recanted. So I'm just worried, like, what do we have safeguards in place so this doesn't happen? Because it's a lot of time, a lot of energy and expectations also wasted, as well as state resources.
but the best safeguard really is that if you recant, number one, under jurisprudence, rules of evidence, recantations are supposed to be not taken seriously by the courts. Secondly, if you recount, then you are supposed to be charged for perjury because you cannot have two versions. Because obviously you're lying in the first statement or you're lying in the second statement. There's perjury. Unfortunately, in our country, when people recant, there's no follow-through about perjury. Kukunti yung lakas ng perjury. So they just drop it. So that's the reality. The non-enforcement of the penalty for perjury has emboldened many people to, turn around every now and then for whatever reasons.
Attorney, going back to the pitfalls of the process, because there are many conflicting interpretations of the Supreme Court ruling, what can you identify some?
Well, there's so many, like for example, when would the 10-day period start? And Congress, in good faith, asked the Supreme Court, please clarify. Unfortunately, true to its tradition, the Supreme Court has been very slow. It hasn't clarified its decision, its wording. So that doesn't help at all because impeachment processes are supposed to be fast. And
So in other words, these technicalities may be taken advantage of the person who is being held accountable via impeachment and can always run to the Supreme Court na naman and delay everything. That's a possibility.
That's possible. And I think that's one of the very bad effect of this decision. Because normally, impeachment is really a legislative process. It's left to the hands of the politicians, the elected representatives. Why? Because these are high government officials and these are offenses against the sovereign Filipino people. So it's our elected representatives, not the judges or the Supreme Court justices who are not elected regularly by the people. And that's why it's left to them. Secondly, the congressmen and the senators are not subject to impeachment, so they can make the rules. Unfortunately, in this case, the Supreme Court, the justices who are also by themselves impeachable officials came into the picture. And that's why many legal experts, practically all, say there was judicial overreach. Masyadong pinakialaman nila yung hindi naman nila trabaho dapat o wala sa kanilang kapangyarihan. That's, I think, the biggest effect of this case. anybody who's impeached will now, citing this president's case, much criticized as it may be, it is still president, then he will keep on running to the Supreme Court every step of the way, and that will delay the impeachment process.
All right. Well, just as a final question, attorney, I mean, you're right. An impeachment is a political exercise as much as it is an accountability measure. But following the announcement of Vice President Sara Duterte that she will be running for the presidency in 2028, how do you think that will affect the impeachment proceedings at the lower house?
Well, the congressmen and the senators, these are astute politicians. So, they will weigh things. But, in politics, a few days, a few months, it's a very long time. So it depends on how the political wind will blow. So if you just talk about politics, that's how they will do it. They will gauge the pulse of the people and they will vote accordingly. At the same time also, they will try to protect their own political interests. But still, that's why it is very important that there's transparency in the process. Everybody sees it so that public opinion can be galvanized and that can be transmitted to the politicians who would need the votes. That's very important, and media like you would play a very important role because though they are politicians, they have to contend with the evidence, the law, and the truth, and the principles of public accountability.
We thank you for your time. Former Integrated Bar of the Philippines President, Atty. Domingo Cayosa.